I'm Joe Lample. When I created Growing a Greener World, I had one goal: to tell stories of everyday people, innovators, entrepreneurs, forward-thinking leaders who are all, in ways both big and small, dedicated to organic gardening and farming, lightening our footprint, conserving vital resources, protecting natural habitats, making a tangible difference for us all. They're real, they're passionate, they're all around us. They're the game changers who are literally growing a greener world and inspiring the rest of us to do the same. Growing a greener world, it's more than a movement, it's our mission. According to the EPA, of the 27 million tons of plastic generated in 2003, less than 4% was recycled, and little of that was garden-related. Now, of the pots that could be recycled, most of the time it didn't happen because we lacked the human intervention to segregate them from the pots that couldn't be recycled. But don't worry, it's not all bad news, and it's getting better. In 2009, the Missouri Botanical Gardens plastic pot recycling program successfully recycled over 130,000 pounds of horticultural plastic, originally destined for landfills. With the cooperation of local garden center drop-off sites, their goal gets more ambitious every year. Dr. Steve Klein is the founder of the Missouri Botanical Gardens Successful Program and manager of the William T. Kemper Center for Home Gardening. Thanks to his own personal quandary over what to do with the pots piling up at his house, Missouri Botanical Gardens' now wildly successful campaign and model program to the world was launched. Since then, the program has collected and prevented over 400 tons of horticultural waste from going into landfills. The Garden's Successful Program in St. Louis is the most extensive public garden recycling program in the United States.
In the beginning, the plastic pot program started by a very simple thing. I looked in my garage and saw a lot of plastic, and it was there because I wanted to reuse the plastic, but I had an excess amount of plastic there. So I thought to myself, there must be a way in which to deal with this, and there must be a lot of other gardeners who have the same kind of condition. So brought the idea back to the Kemper Center for Home Gardening, put it on the table, and found out there are a lot of people who have plastic in their garage. So what do you do with plastic? Sometimes you can throw it away. Some waste haulers will accept it, some will not. The next step to recycling plastic was to get kind of an idea of how much plastic was going to be out there. So we asked our members of the garden if they would contribute plastic, and they responded. The initial recycling episode started when one weekend we just experimented and said, bring us your plastic and dump it on the lot of our parking lot. And they did it. And within a 3-hour period, we had probably 5,000 or 6,000 pounds of plastic. It was such an immense pile that we repeated that again, and it continued to repeat and repeat. And then it became such a monster in effect that each and every year people expected us to accept their plastic. And so we did. And after about 12 years, we ended up with about 150,000 pounds of plastic that comes in on an annual basis. And by the mounds, you can tell, and the passion that people have, you can tell that they're very enthusiastic about recycling. But beyond just collecting the plastic, we needed to find what we could do with it. So the ultimate goal was to close the recycling loop and to try to develop a product which could go back out into the garden. No one knew very much about the type of plastic that was going to come in, and ultimately to do something with it, to make a product out of it, and to put it back out there was going to be a challenge. But we did it. It took about 12 years. It worked with the backing of the state through the Department of Natural Resources, with its local solid waste management district, and with an industry supporter. And by the process of each year trying to make the whole collection, extending the collection to the greens industry, and then processing in a step-by-step manner in order to get it into a usable form that the manufacturers can use, we eventually ended up with a piece of lumber, which we're very proud of, can go back into the garden as a plastic board and then be used for raised bed gardening. So as you bring your pots in each and every year, it's a very great feeling, I think, with the enthusiasm to recycle, to also see that the product being made out of that can be reused back in the garden again. You know that it's a big labor type of project, so we're interested in creating jobs, but I think as we set this up as a model system, it can be duplicated in other communities.
All right, so to have a successful plastic pot recycling program, you have to have a lot of pots. And here at the Missouri Botanical Garden, commonly known as MoBOT, this is one of those collection facilities just outside of the garden. And Steve, it looks like we're off to a good start.
Hey Joe, this is our first recycling day and they left us a pile here.
Okay, so what do we have to do? Looks like we've got some work.
Well, first thing we have to do is go through the pile. Now there are different types of plastic and we have to sort that plastic out.
How do we know what type of plastic it is?
Well, you know, in gardening world, we get 3 different types of plastic typically. We have number 2, which is a recycling symbol number 2, and that's a polyethylene type pot, real rubbery. We get a number 5 pot, which is polypropylene, and that's what these are.
Okay.
And then we have kind of a mystery plastic. It's called polystyrene, and it's a number 6. And this is what's really different. Sometimes these are not marked, but they're crunchy, so we can tell the difference.
Why do we have to sort them?
Well, different types of plastic make different types of products. The 2s and the 5s are pretty similar in plastic type, so we co-mingle those or put them together. This is the different plastic, it's polystyrene, and this is so totally different, we put it in a different side of the pile.
So not all plastic is created equal. Just because it's plastic, you just can't throw it into a big pot and assume it's all going to be recycled.
Right, we used to do that, but we found out you have to separate the plastic out because it is not recyclable if it's commingled or put all together.
And then in these bins, you've got them separated, so the 6, those trays and those crinkly pot go in there, and then these 2 can be combined, the 2s and the 5s.
These recycling trailers are very handy because they give you directions right on the side. They tell you number recycling symbol 2, 5, or number 6. So all people have to do when these go out to the garden centers is look at the bottom of the pot and then separate into the different bins.
All right, put us to work.
Yeah.
All right, let's go. Got to put them in the bins.
All right. Golly, this is confusing. They need to make these numbers bigger is what they need to do.
Yeah, we got a big job here. You know, this is a mountain of plastic, but the amount of plastic that comes into the U.S. each year that gardeners generate, they could fill a baseball stadium.
No way. Whoa. Holy cow.
Looks like this one's full, Joe.
Okay.
Let's go. This is our processing site. Now, this has been funded by various donors as well as generous donations by our Department of Natural Resources in the Solid Waste District. And this is the place where it all happens.
So this is that point where the big pieces go in and they come out really small.
When they go into this machine, a granulator, it's a powerful machine that will grind this up into little bitty pieces, and it goes into a nice big box, 1,000 pounds a piece. That gets shipped to the manufacturer. They make things out of it. And this is going to make a lot of noise, so you ready to turn it on?
Go for it.
Turn it on!
Let's go.
Wow, Steve, now this is a part of the process most people don't get to see. All of those pots coming in, all the people helping sort them, the machine, and this is what we end up with. Talk about this.
Wow, this is a particle. It's just plastic particles. This is what our pots turn out to be. Those thousands and thousands of pots just come down to particles in a box. This is called a Gaylord box.
Yep.
It weighs about 1,000 pounds, and this is what the manufacturers will take back and be able to melt this material down into another product.
Now, what type of items would be made from all of this, Steve?
Well, we're excited to make it into plastic lumber, and that lumber can be used to make raised beds. And those raised beds can raise vegetables, and people get a chance to see the whole recycling loop from pot back into lumber, which can be used for gardening.
And that really is recycling.
That absolutely is a good thing.
Full circle. All right, clearly it takes some money to get an operation like this up and going, and it also takes a lot of volunteers. But certainly there's some more things that the industry could be doing to make this process easier, right?
I think there's a couple things that are kind of no-brainer things. First of all, we have the recycling symbol. It's usually very small. It's on the bottom of the pot.
Absolutely. You could barely find it, and you know, once you do, you can't read it.
That's right. Boy, if they could just put it a little bigger and stick it on the side, wouldn't that be great?
Bigger. Yeah, a lot bigger would be fine with me.
Hey, here's another thing. These metal rings, we have to cut each one of these rings out of the pot. It takes an extra 5 minutes.
And that's to hold the tag on.
Yeah, it's valuable. I understand that, but if we could switch to something that's plastic or something that isn't, at least isn't metal.
Right, you can toss that in the grinder as well.
Hey, the last thing I'd probably recommend is these tags. Now I know that some of these can be recycled and some have the recycling symbol on it, but if these could be, the information at least could be painted on the side of a pot, then we wouldn't have a tag. I think people could adapt to that.
And it's important to have this information there, but somebody's got to think about this and really get together as an industry to maybe even standardize the pot sizes so in the interim they can at least be stored and stacked easier.
That would make our job a lot easier. The last thing, hey, why don't they even consider making a lot of this out of just one material so we don't have 3 different types of plastic to sort out?
And if they do use different types of plastic, then color code it. Maybe a blue for the 2s, a red for the 5s. How hard is that?
That's an excellent idea.
Sounds simple to me.
Me too.
Now, it's one thing to see all those plastic pots ground into those tiny little pieces, but the process of converting it into that plastic lumber, well, that's another thing, and it sounds really intriguing.
And the company that makes the lumber is right here in St. Louis, so we had to go and check it out.
Absolutely. Let's go see. This ought to be really cool. All right, so Brad's the Chief Operating Officer here, and today you wear another hat as tour guide. Brad, we recognize this. This came from the garden, right?
Correct. This is the plastic as we receive it from the garden from Steve after it's been ground up. It comes straight from here in this box. We use this box and we put it in our extrusion process to make lumber.
Okay, well, we know about the process that gets it to this point. Show us what's next.
Okay. From here, we'll take this box, we'll pick it up, and we'll move it right over here.
Okay.
When we take that box, we put it right here. They stick a tube in it, vacuum all the plastic up into this hopper right here. It goes down to our extruder.
What is an extruder?
An extruder, it's sort of like a grown man's Play-Doh machine. It mixes all the plastic up, heats it up, squirts it out the end in whatever shape we want.
What temperature does it get up to?
We heat it between 350 and 400 degrees. This particular machine will do about 2.5 million pounds of plastic this year, including all the garden stuff, all the flower pots. We have 2 of them.
So it's really hot when it comes out. So
yeah, you gotta be careful. It'll burn you if you're not careful.
So what do you do after that?
Well, then it goes into the water bath to cool down. It's 120 feet long. It's full of 45-degree water. The plastic moves down here, it cools down, and the shape sets. When it comes out the other end, it's solid plastic lumber.
Wow, that is so cool. Okay, so what do you do once it comes out?
It goes down the line, we cut it, stack it on pallets, ship it back to the garden.
Perfect. Full circle, way to go.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for the tour.
You're welcome.
It's really cool. Now, whenever Stephen and Kristen are trialing a new plant, it goes in the ground, but you know what gets left behind? It's the black plastic pot. Now, we gardeners, we create a lot of beauty, but unfortunately, there's a lot of waste that's left behind in the process. And in spite of our best efforts to recycle, a lot of those pots never end up getting recycled. The problem is, unlike milk jugs and water bottles, there's an industry standard there, and there are briefs to sort in the recycling facility. But these plastic pots, not so much. You look at the bottom of these, this one happens to be a 2, yet this one, it's a 5. This one doesn't have any number, and that one looks like a 6. Now, at some point in that recycling process, there's a human being that has to sort all this, and that becomes a real problem. Plus the fact that these are often very dirty, sometimes contaminated with chemicals, or maybe full of rocks. So, in spite of our best efforts, where we think they're being recycled, a lot of these still end up in the landfill. Now, there's some good news because manufacturers are making great strides for growers and consumers like us with these plastic pots that our plants go into. Like these, for example. Now, it looks like a good hard plastic, but you know what? They're made from rice hulls. Now, these will not break down until they go in the ground, which is how they're designed. And one of the nice features is with a style like this that has the slits, the roots will come right out of there to give the plants a head start once they do go in the ground. These guys, they also look like plastic pots, but they're wheat-based. And they come in lots of different sizes. They're good and sturdy, but wheat's a highly sustainable resource, and there's no petroleum used to make these. One of the really cool ones out there right now, this is made from composted cow manure. Now, you might think that's kind of nasty, but don't worry, it is composted. It doesn't smell at all. I use these all the time. And why I like these is, in addition to the fact that it's from renewable resources, you put this in the ground and as it breaks down, it improves the soil, and it's also feeding your plants. Now, if you don't consider these all that pretty, I don't blame you. So if you're looking for something that's really attractive for inside the house, check these out. Now, these come in a lot of different shapes and sizes. They're made from rice straw and wheat straw, bamboo and reeds. And when you're through with these don't have to go to the recycle center. In fact, all you do is break these down and put them in your compost pile, and in a matter of months, you won't even know they're there. And I call that the ultimate in sustainability. You know, if you're going to work at Growing a Greener World, it's all about reusing and recycling everything you can. And that includes vegetables from the garden when they seem just a little bit past their prime.
You know, what do you do with all these leftovers of vegetables, chicken bones, anything like that? Well, don't throw them away. I'm going to say that again. Don't throw them away. All these things make wonderful homemade stock, okay? You've already paid for all these things, vegetables, chicken. Use it. Saves money, adds flavor, all right? What we're gonna make today is homemade chicken stock. Really, really simple. Gonna have some onions, some carrots, celery, a few herbs, and leftover chicken bones that I make because I make homemade chicken. But if you go to the store and go to the rotisserie chicken, eat the chicken, no problem, but put the bones in a Ziploc bag like I do. Wait until you get a couple chickens, leftover produce, time for some chicken stock, okay? So we just start with a few onions. We're gonna peel them. That's the only thing I'm not going to include. On the very outside of the onion can be a little bit of dirt right in here, right in this portion. So we'll leave that out, okay? Quarter them. Nothing crazy, nothing fancy. There you go. That's gourmet food for you guys. Really simple. And it's from leftover onions. Pretty good. So we'll take the skin off of that. Right with the ends, and we'll quarter those as well, just like this. And in they go. Now we have some carrots, a couple old carrots. They may not look that hot, but they have plenty of flavor, so don't throw them out. So again, I'll take the tops off, the very tops that may have some dirt sitting in there, and just give them a nice rough chop, just like that. And in they go. Now, it's really important that you see how old and neglected this celery is. So check this out. This celery doesn't look so hot, okay? It looks like my dog used it as a chew toy, but it still has plenty of flavor left over in it, so don't throw it out just because it doesn't look very good. It still has plenty of flavor. We'll chop it up, and we'll take the bottom portion off, just like we did with the onions, because it may have a little residual dirt right in the end. Quick chop, and it goes in. There we are. And I like to use a lot of parsley as well, but I like to use just the leaves because they have the most flavor. Not so when it comes to stock. These ends, these little base ends right here, don't throw them away either, okay? We're gonna use them for stock, and they go in there and they add a little bit of saltiness to stock, and that's why I'm using them. Fresh thyme. Lemony, wonderful, vibrant. Every single stock should have a little bit of thyme in there, so we'll throw in a few pieces of that. Okay, and some black peppercorns, whole black peppercorns. We don't want to grate it and grind and grate them because that's going to be too much pepper. Peppercorns is nice and soft, a little bit of pepper, a touch of kosher salt. And that right there is vegetable stock, but we're doing chicken stock here, guys. And this is what I'm talking about, these great bones left over. When you roast your own chickens at home, like I said, you eat all the meat off of it, but there's still a lot of flavor still left in these bones, and in they go as well. Just like that. You know what? It may not be pretty, but it sure is delicious. Just press them on down. The last thing I have to do, fill it up with water just so it's covering the bones, bring it up to a boil, reduce it to a simmer, and then we'll go take a walk for about 3-4 hours because that's all it takes. A little bit of neglect as far as these produce, leftover chicken bones, and you got nothing but flavor for no cost at all. Okay, just a couple more things to remember. One, I forgot to put in the garlic, so the garlic's in there. It came up to a boil, I lowered it down to a really slow simmer. About 3, 4, even 5 hours would make great chicken stock, no problem. You're gonna strain it, and that liquid, cool it down, okay, to room temperature. And once that happens, if you're gonna use it in the next few days, put it in the fridge. But if you wanna freeze the stuff like I do, that's where these come into play. Old school yogurt containers. Freeze them, fill it up almost all the way, and you'll freeze them. They're good for about 6 to 9 months. And if you want just a little bit of flavor, those ice cube trays. Put them in there. Once they freeze, pop them out in a freezer bag. A little bit of liquid, well, how about some stock? Boom! Delicious food every time.
We still have a way to go before recycling horticultural plastic is widely accepted by processing facilities, and it will no doubt take the cooperation from many sides before that happens. Fortunately, progress is being made and momentum is building. And as we've seen today, there are some great alternatives to plastic that are becoming viable options. We've seen some great examples today of what others are doing to mitigate all the waste from horticultural plastic.
But what can you do to make a difference?
Well, you can start by looking for alternatives to plastic that are either biodegradable or made from renewable resources.
And support nurseries, growers, and public gardens that are helping to alleviate the plastic pot problem.
Or you can reuse those pots yourself. But be sure to check out the web too, because there are always people there willing to take those pots off your hands with sites like freecycle.org. And don't forget to check out our site at Growing a Greener World, because we have a lot more information on this subject today. I'm Joe Lample.
And I'm Patty Moreno.
And we'll see you back here next time for more Growing a Greener World. See, the sorting is really important because some 6s got in there. We know those cannot go in the granulator, but these trays, I thought they were 6s. They actually turn out to be, I don't know, 2s or 5s, which mean they can be granulated. So it really takes a lot of paying attention to at this process.